Welcome to the podcast, Katie. It's absolutely fantastic to have you on.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Really happy to be here this morning.
So I'm going to ask you the same question I ask all my guests. What is your money story?
Okay, so I've been really overthinking this question. So you told me, this. I've listened to some of the podcasts, and everyone kind of initially goes straight to their childhood because that's where we develop the money story. Actually, like a few of the guests have said, isn't something you necessarily think about or give time to. Especially in the entrepreneurial world, it does get talked about a lot. I don't know outside the entrepreneurial world because I've never been in it. And I'm really overthinking, what am I going to say? What is my money story? And I've done the work, I've done the workbooks and thought about this. But I think the bottom line for me is that I've always loved money and I've always wanted it. And I've always wanted to have more of it in my life to give me the things that I wanted. I've always had this really strong work ethic, but it was to get the money for the things that I wanted. And then I started thinking a bit more about, what were we brought up with money? And I didn't have I haven't got the whole rags to riches story that a lot of people do have. And an awful lot of people that are successful in business have this very rags to riches story, which is somewhat of a hang up of mine in some ways, because I almost feel like you need that rag story, if that makes sense.
I don't have it either. No, I don't have it either.
Do you know what I mean? So many people have it. And
Yeah.
I've been told you can't have press and you can't have this. So I've probably got some random hang up there somewhere as well. But had a fairly nice upbringing, traditional working class family. We didn't want for much. We certainly weren't rich by any means, but we didn't go without. We were always fed and watered and had a roof over our head. So we were very lucky in that sense. Very much brought up with the you need to work hard to make money type ethics, like I said, working class kind of South Wales family. So generations of past miners and things, I guess,
Yeah.
and where you had to work very, very hard to earn money. So that's been one of my biggest, I think, beliefs going forward, was that I have to work very, very hard to earn money. And when the work, not to say I haven't worked hard all my life to get to where I'm at, but certainly if I'm earning money and I don't feel it's really, really hard work, I can still have a huge issue with that.
Yeah.
But also, like I said, I've always loved money and what it gives me. And for me, it's very much about the freedom. That is what I'm all about, is having that freedom. So for me, it's something joyful to be able to help me get there. I don't think money buys you happiness, but I do think it helps get those things that can bring you happiness in one way or another. I'm quite a positive person anyway, but I've always had the belief I could make money because I've been self-employed from 18, and family members around me were self-employed. So for me, that wasn't an issue either. Starting out in business, it was just like a normal thing. Yeah, of course I could do it for myself. But I remember being told things like probably the usual, money doesn't grow on trees and so forth. And that type of thing, and you have to work hard. And that rich people weren't very nice people was something that I certainly seen as a child. But yeah, the whole money mindset thing and working on yourself with money, certainly something that I feel strongly about, and I feel it pops its head up in one way or another along the way. So yeah. I had a recent experience. I was at an event with Charlie Day, and it was very last minute. I decided to go to an event of hers because I was in Birmingham with a client, and I thought, I can make this happen. So I decided to stay overnight, but instead of booking myself a nice hotel, I just automatically booked something really cheap and cheerful, because that was just the mentality of what I'd probably always done. And I ended up in this awful Ibis that was the worst hotel literally I've ever stepped foot in. It was horrific. And I'm not a snob, I'm the furthest thing from a snob, but it was horrific. And it had a child's stool and lime green that you were stuck to. It was one of these really hot days we've had this summer. The aircon was non-existent. I was literally sat there in pants and a t-shirt, sweat box. It was horrific. And I started writing this email to my list about saying, these things. I'd literally just had the biggest financial month of my business, all these big wins. And then I was booking the cheapest hotel I could find. And I just thought, wow, clearly there's still some deep-rooted issues of why are you paying more for something that you can have for a lot less money and buy the cheapest things. And I didn't realize that was something that was clearly inbred in me. So anyway, half a bottle of wine later, I just booked the Belfry and an Uber and took myself out, and had a lovely, lovely evening sat in the Belfry. So it's something I'm more aware of, I guess. But and yes, that's probably It is, yeah. I think it's having that, I did have the choice, and that's lovely, don't get me wrong, but I had the choice to actually make that change.
Yeah. And A, it's the awareness, but B, it kind of comes down recognizing what your values are as well, and maybe having a question with yourself, with regards to values. I've said on this podcast before that Warren Buffett, who was one of the richest men in the world, he's got many, many billions of pounds. He's never bought a brand new car. He's always had old bangers, because to him, he sees no value in a brand new car.
Yeah.
Whereas to somebody else, me, I love a brand new car, even though I know the minute it goes off the forecourt, it loses 20%. But for me, the smell of a brand new car and getting used, all the features and everything, which I never ever use. But I think it is recognizing what's serving you and what's not serving you. And you've clearly now got that awareness of, actually, that wasn't serving me. I'm going to make a different decision. So that's a really good thing.
And it was the energy around it and how it made me feel. That I felt awful in the first time. My husband was on the phone saying, that's not a very nice part of Birmingham, be careful. And it had an icky feeling around it, not just physically with the stickiness, but with the whole emotion, the way it made me feel and the energy around it. I felt on edge. I felt on tenterhooks. And then when I moved, my energy shifted completely. I felt like I'm so much nicer and lighter. I enjoyed my evening, and it was just a completely different shift. So you're quite right. And that car thing as well. I've always liked kind of big cars and 4x4s and that sort of thing. And it didn't have to be new for me. That wasn't the thing. But I always wanted a Range Rover. And when I had a Range Rover the first time, I don't know, maybe 10 or more years ago now, that was a huge thing for me. And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't that it was new. That bit didn't. I mean, I would like a brand new one, but it didn't bother me as much. It was more about having that Range Rover, because for me, that was my dream car. And it was something that I'd always wanted from a child, because we quite often had 4x4s in childhood. And again, I remember the excitement around them. So again, it was just that feeling, I guess. But yeah, definitely. So I can resonate with that a bit, not the new bit necessarily, like you said, but the actual car, because of the feelings that it gives you.
And, that's exactly it. One question I very often ask when I'm presenting in groups, etc., I utilize something called Mentimeter, which is you're able to ask the audience questions and they're able to respond anonymously. Nobody knows their response. And one of those questions is, when you think about money, how do you feel? Because actually, a lot of our relationship with money, our money mindset, comes out in emotion. And that emotion can be feeling happy, feeling excited, feeling sad, feeling fear, feeling guilt, feeling shame. And it's those feelings that money gives us, which actually is not money giving us those feelings. It's us creating those feelings based on how we're feeling about ourselves. Our sense of self-worth, our self-value then gets imprinted on our relationship with money. So I think once you identify that sense of awareness of, how am I feeling? How do I want to feel? And how do I make that shift? Then we can see it's possible for us to actually make that change if we make that decision. Because at the end of the day, everything is a decision. It's just which way is that decision going to go? Because doing nothing is a decision in the same way as doing something.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Something I love about you, Katie, and we had a short conversation before we started recording. I came into business having spent 20 years in corporate life. You've never worked for anybody else. Why did you make that decision?
I think because I mean, maybe I could, and I was brought up with a lot of family members being self-employed. So for me, I think an awful lot of people at that age, it was certainly, how old am I? 42, so 20 plus years ago, it wasn't an option, or it wasn't the done thing. It wasn't the done thing. You went to school, you went to university potentially, then you kind of got a job. It wasn't the done thing. Whereas for me, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It was quite a normal kind of route to take. My dad had been self-employed most of my think all my childhood, actually. My mum had predominantly been self-employed, other family members, so it was just quite normal.
Yeah.
I did actually leave school at 18 after my A levels, and I think looking back, the reason I didn't go to university was because there was no university course, kind of how to make money, how to be an entrepreneur, and I knew I always wanted to make money, and it was a big draw for me. It still is, I guess. I still have quite a positive, I guess, relationship-ish with money. So for me, I got offered, I did go into employment for 9 months, and I did do a stint in my 20s for a few years of employment. But I've always gone back to self-employment, and I got offered an opportunity to buy a business at 18, and I was like, yeah, why not? What's the worst that can happen? And I bought a little sandwich bar that was close to me, and had that for 3 years, and then sold it, then went back into employment for a few years in my early 20s, and then was like, oh my goodness, no, I need to be self-employed. That was just my calling, and something I just absolutely adored doing. So done loads of different things then over the years, kind of product, in person, online, service-based, done them all. So I just think there was always a belief that I could make money doing that, and a bit more in control of my own kind of future to a certain extent, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that is the thing that, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, that sense of control of your time, that sense of freedom to make the decisions that work for you and your family, I think sometimes that is underrated. I think you hear a lot of conversation about, the highs and lows of being an entrepreneur. The lows very often being that you don't get that, that salary, that paycheck, at the end of every month. You have to make things happen to get the money. But actually, that sense of freedom, that sense of being the mistress of your own destiny, that feeling is like no other, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, freedom is my number one value, and anyone that kind of follows me on social and stuff will get that impression straight away from it. It's what I'm all about. And I think when I had my younger children, I started a business. We had a guest house, and my husband and I decided that would be the best thing to do, real lifestyle business, bring our children up alongside the business. I mean, anyone thinking of doing it, it's like the hardest thing in the world, actually. But when we sold that, it did give us what we looked back at it, and it had been a really difficult few years. We had 2 children in 21 months, and I had 3 stepchildren as well. So we had, I think there was 5 under 12. And it was a really, really difficult time financially, for various different reasons. It was just full on. But it enabled us to have the freedom to actually bring our children up, which I do forget from time to time, that I was there totally. I never had to, and don't get me wrong, I was working 3 days or whatever after going and giving birth. A bit different in that sense. You don't have the maternity. But I was there every single day for my children. And then in primary school, the things that I think I certainly took for granted, they go into every concert. They're there for every school drop off and pick up. As much as I moaned about those things as well, I was able to do that. They are precious, and you don't really realize until, as we were saying just before, we've now got teenagers, and those early years do fly by. So for me, that was a huge, huge why initially, though, especially those primary school years, for being able to be there all the time. And as we just again speaking now, I kind of come on this morning to Leslie a little bit frantically because my son had to be picked up from school. Both my husband and I work from home, so one of us were able to do it. And again, that's quite a nice position to be in. We haven't got to go and ask the boss, can we leave, to go and do that. And we were able to just go immediately and be there 5 minutes later. So all these things, certainly huge wins for me in having that flexibility and freedom to be there. Even now they're that little bit older, they still need us, just in different ways.
And I think that is the thing. It is being able to plot out exactly what you want when you want it, but actually slot in when the children need you, when things come up. And I think for me, the gratitude that I have for that is immense. My husband's away. We have another business where we sell ski property in the Alps, and my husband's away this week in France. And I can only manage that because I do what I do. If I was working for somebody, it would be very, very difficult for me to be around to do the things that I need to do for the children. And I think appreciating that actually amplifies the feeling of gratitude, but actually amplifies the whole sense of, as entrepreneurs, that we can have the gift of being able to do what we want to suit the situation that we are in. And I think that is really powerful.
Yeah,
so
I do.
Tell me more about what you do now, because I think there's a big connection between what you do and potentially people having to really work on their relationship with money to be really comfortable to do what you do, essentially, in terms of working with you. So talk me through what you do now.
So I have various different hats, I always feel. I like to help in different kind of ways. So I work predominantly with female service-based entrepreneurs, and I help them predominantly get more visible and grow their audience. And I do that in a few different ways. One of my main core kind of ways of working with people is helping them get set up with Facebook and Instagram ads to grow that audience, increase visibility, which I strongly believe is kind of the bottom line of growing a successful business. I offer business mentoring, strategy alongside that as well. But a lot of it comes down to the Facebook ads, the launches, the funnels, a lot of the techie side of business, which an awful lot of people are so scared of. So yeah, I absolutely love it. And I love helping people kind of get from where they are to where they want to be, and seeing the growth and seeing people increase their audience and visibility and leads and seeing what that brings them. And it is quite a tangible outcome because it can often bring in more money, more sales, more leads. And it is lovely working along those people and seeing the change in them. And you can see the confidence grow as they launch and get more successful. And it isn't just about the financial ROI. It is about the other things they get as an aside of that, and the confidence to do these things, and the know-how and the understanding and the capability and the belief that they can do these things for themselves. And that's a real part of satisfaction that I get from helping these women.
Yeah. And I think the whole thing about, Facebook ads, Instagram ads can throw up, lots of big wobbles for business owners.
Yep.
A, because it's deemed to be expensive.
Yep.
B, you're getting more visible. And that can be a huge symptom of, issues around self-worth, self-value. What are people going to say? Seeing my face, shoved in front of them several times a week, etc. What is it, do you think, about all of that scares people and holds them back from actually embracing something that actually is there to help their business, not hinder their business?
I think there's a few different things. And I think one of them is the fear of success, which doesn't get talked about probably enough. There's a pressure on us to actually be successful. What is deemed successful? Is it your version of success, or is it those coaches over there that are going on and on about 6, 7 figures, months and years? And actually, am I successful if I'm not doing that? I could talk about that for hours. It's a huge kind of issue of mine, about what is success and why are we. I feel like we're ramming down our throats at times this financial level of whoever made this up. We're not successful. If we're actually creating an income for ourselves as being self-employed, that is success, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway, that's another tangent. But I think it brings that up. It brings up, what if I fail? The whole what ifs, I'm not good enough. I wouldn't even describe it as much as a wobble, but listening to a couple more of your podcasts this morning whilst having a walk, and lots of people on there were what I would deem as hugely successful people, and some of them had these amazing businesses and really and there was some people talking about 7-figure businesses and so forth, and I was thinking, oh, Leslie Shaw, she knows who I am I successful enough to be on Leslie's podcast? And I did start to have this wobble, and I was like, Leslie said I can go, I'm going. But it does bring that up, and again, visibility thing, like you said, it opens up a whole new can of worms. And we learned about this at an event that we chatted at recently. Visibility can bring more negativity. Now, I've got a bit of a belief. I see some very inspirational people that I follow in this entrepreneurial world that are huge in terms of what they've achieved financially and otherwise. And some of these people have drama. And they have all these different things. Drama comes to them. Now, I am not a drama person. My husband might argue differently to that, but I am not. I'm not someone that enjoys, let's say, negative drama. I'm not someone that enjoys that negative drama. For me, honestly, that really holds me back a little bit. So I'm like, what if, oh gosh, if I'm a millionaire, well, if I'm turning over £1 million in my business, that means that I'm going to get all this negativity and people are going to hate me overnight. I quite like being liked. And I'm the person that kind of gets on with everybody. I'm just a da type person. That actually holds me back. So that's, there's a couple of personal examples in that of, I think, what holds people back. And it's also the fear with ads specifically of, what if I don't get anything? What if I don't get a return? And nobody can guarantee that return. And I get this all the time with clients, especially when they're starting off and it's their first time with running ads, they're dipping their toe in the water. What have I got to spend a month? And I often say, if you're going to spend less than £500, please don't pay an ads manager, because it's not the most efficient use of your time. Go and get this course or do some self-learning. Make sure you do them correctly still, but get in the trenches a little bit and learn how to do them rather than invest in an ads manager, because it's not the most efficient use of your money. And people say, well, that's still a lot of money. I said, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you have to have some budget as a business owner, which not everyone kind of understands. And I think if you've been around a long time as well, what we used to get completely free from Facebook and Instagram in terms of reach and so forth, we don't. Just don't. It's a completely different world. So you do have to pay to reach even the same people that you might have done for free. Now, that's just a shift in the mindset and the way it is. That's just life and business. And I actually do believe you need to have a marketing budget. Where you choose to put that, I'm not saying Facebook ads is the only answer. I 100% agree that there's a million different options for visibility. Facebook ads are just one of those powerful ways of doing that. And people need to understand, yes, you will get some leads, from your ads. I'm not saying they're necessarily going to turn to return on investment, a financial return on investment immediately. I can't guarantee that. Nobody can.
Exactly.
But it's also the longer journey now. Years ago, you could put something up and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, here's my thing, buy my thing. And they might buy your thing. Nowadays, you need that connection. You need the touch points. You need the nurture. You need people to resonate with you. You need to see your face, hear your voice, etc., etc. And I think more and more that journey does need these touch points. So I keep saying to clients, the people you're putting in the pot now, they might not convert right now, but keep nurturing, keep giving value, showing you're the expertise, keep showing up, and then they might convert later down the line. And I think that's a really important message when it comes to Facebook ads, because there's loads of negative and they don't work for me. The amount of people that tell me they don't work for them, and when you get to the bare bones, it's because they haven't done them properly. They've just boosted a post for £50 and then got nobody bought my £10,000 offer, and I'm like, what did you expect?
Are you surprised? Exactly. Yeah. And I do think as well there is a bit of a mindset that running your own business, creating that sense of know, like, and trust is a very, very quick thing. When, exactly as you've said, I think there's something like 27 touch points are needed now.
That's what I always say. 22, 27. Yeah, it's huge.
And so posting once on Facebook a day or going on doing an Instagram live once a week, sadly, wouldn't that be amazing if that was as easy as it was? But if you look at how it was 25 years ago, I worked for Orange at the time, and we were going into a collaboration with Yell, who had the Yellow Book, because that is how you marketed. How much harder in reality was that than what we have today?
Exactly.
So whilst sorry, you carry on.
I was going to say, you said Yell then. One of my paid employment in my 20s was with Thompson Directory. So we were always in Yell's kind of
shadow.
We looked up to Yell. Absolutely, that's the word. So we were always taught then, back in like the sales days, that it was 7 touch points.
Yeah, exactly.
Even then, that was just calling or just rocking up outside their house, or their business premises. But what a difference.
I know. And goes to show that really social media, if we approach it with the correct mindset, and I have to be honest with you, I don't always approach it with the right mindset. But actually, when we think back to not that long ago, the choices that business owners had was to pay for adverts in Yellow Pages, in amongst everybody else who was in Yellow Pages, or to pay a lot of money to be on billboards, or having to go to in-person events, all the time. None of those were guaranteed a return, but at least with social media, there are lots of methods available. And what ads can do when the time is right for you and your business is start to speed that process up. And
exactly,
I think that is the way to look at it, isn't it?
Absolutely. I say it to clients constantly, you know, it gets that data back so you can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
You know, clients can be tempted if they've got a smaller budget to try and do all the testing, but it takes time to get that data back. And again, a bigger ad spend just gives you that data back quicker so you can make informed decisions. They work for most industries and most people. And again, it's having that mindset sometimes of thinking, well, I'm going to give this 3 months or 6 months. And I had a few different clients with this kind of mindset, but one client in particular stands out. And I remember her vividly saying to me at the beginning, she committed for 6 months ads manager. She's actually just renewed. And she said, I just want to give it 6 months. It's something I'm absolutely prepared to test. Everything in business is a test. And look, she had a fairly okay ad spend, and she was investing in me for 6 months. And she said, as long as I get even like one client, she knows it's going to more than cover her investment. And she just had this really good way of looking at it. Well, actually, I know one client, look, all these leads we're getting in, one client is just going to more than cover that ad spend anyway. And she just had a very good way of looking at it. It was all a test. It was just trying something else. And I just thought that was a really kind of good way of looking from above and seeing, rather than expecting, you know, within a week to have £5,000 back or something.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, and these things can happen. I'm not saying they don't. Another client had £10,000 back after a £300 ad spend recently after we set some ads. Of course they do that, but that isn't a normal thing.
Yeah.
That isn't you can expect this, and I would never say that.
And that's the good thing, isn't it? Is to be honest about what the outcomes could be,
yes.
But also for the client to be really, really aware, you know, a little bit like how many of us have bought courses and they weren't what we thought they were going to be, or we didn't put in the amount of time that we should have to do everything that was prescribed in the course. And I think when you're running your own business, there are going to be things that are trial and error, and to accept some will work, some won't work. Don't see them as a failure. See them as a lesson on your path to creating the success that you want to see.
Absolutely. And the bottom line is, no matter which of these paths you choose for your business, and it doesn't have to be this path now forever, are about visibility. And without the visibility, you're not getting in front of people. You could be the world's best kept secret. No one knows about you. You don't even exist in their eyes. You know, there's so many people out there that need whatever anyone else of you doing. And it is just about getting in front of those people.
Yeah, absolutely. We've mentioned several times in our conversations success, and success looking different for different people.
Yeah.
What does success look like for you?
Success is having that freedom to make different choices, and doing the things I want to do without having to hold myself back, I guess. Being able to make a good income, to be able to do all the things that I want to do in life for myself and my family. And I don't think it has necessarily like a financial link to it. Yes, I want to make a decent income. Decent for me doesn't mean in the £1 million mark. But it just means having that money to make sure everything is paid for. There's some left over. For me, freedom is also linked to travel, and I like to travel. We go to Spain very regularly, and we're looking at possibly moving over for a couple of years. So having those choices to be able to do that, I haven't got to change my job or quit anything to be able to make those choices. And I understand that not everyone could just have a year or two where they decide to go and live in a different part of the world. So things like that for me are very much about having the flexibility and freedom of being able to make those choices.
Yeah. And it's said very often that, you know, our limiting beliefs are not just our limiting beliefs, but our positive beliefs as well, are developed in our childhood. So you've mentioned that, you know, the reason why you've largely been self-employed all your life is because lots of your family were. My childhood was different. You know, my mum and dad, they were employed. My dad in the police force, and my mum for a retail chain. So I went down the path they wanted, which was university, and then, going and working for a corporate. How do you think your children are approaching what their employed life is going to look like?
Yeah. I think we're definitely rubbing off on them in terms of them seeing it maybe different to a lot of their parents, the way they work. And I hope that we're helping our children understand there are different routes and different options available that just weren't available 20, 30, 40 years ago. And different ways of working, and the fact that I can work from anywhere. I often say to my children, you have these options to be able to work from anywhere. These options didn't exist. My job didn't exist. What I do now didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. What my husband does didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. So the options available to them. And my daughter came home from school recently, and she was told, I think it was 75% of the jobs that their generation, she's 14, their generation are going to have don't even exist yet. So it's difficult for them to plan, what their future is going to look like when there's so much pressure at 14, 13 to choose their GCSE options and so forth and map out their life. That actually most of them, their jobs and positions and businesses don't even exist yet. So the entrepreneurialism is definitely growing, and I think a lot more people are going to end up working for themselves. And it is something that I try and rub off with the children, because I think you have so much more choice and flexibility working for yourself. And I know they have to make their own decisions, and it's difficult sometimes to hold my thoughts in, because I do feel quite strongly about that. And I feel quite strongly that, I feel we were mapped out certainly in our generation of, you had to go to school, you had to go to college or university, then you get a good job, you work your way up, you get married, you have children,
get your pension.
Yes.
I'm just my dad. Yeah.
I'm just so like, okay, that's fine if that's what you want. I'm not saying that doesn't work for you if it doesn't. It is what you want, but there are other options now available, and I feel quite strongly kind of educating the children to make them understand there are other options, and even financial knowledge. We just weren't taught stuff, certainly in school, and a lot of kind of upper classes were taught more financial education, certainly, than middle and certainly lower and working classes were ever taught. So it's something that we feel quite strongly about. And we're my husband's 48 and I'm 42, and we're kind of we only just started hearing about all this stuff in recent years. Like I wish we had known about it in our 20s. We're trying to help the children to understand and educate them as well. About finances. So it's not just employment, self-employment, the options financially to be able to give you a much nicer life and a life of flexibility and freedom.
And I think as well, it's making children aware that there are many, many choices, and that if you have aspiration, that is going to make your ability to see those choices a lot easier, and to recognize that actually you can be absolutely anything you want to be, and the only limitation is the one that you place on yourself.
Absolutely.
And I'm very passionate about financial literacy for children, and it isn't just about that financial awareness of personal finance. It is actually that connection between money and your mindset, because I think successful people are not born, they are created, they are developed, and they're developed as a result of their parents making them aware of the choices out there, but them having the belief in themselves that they truly can make a decision. I want to go for that. And they go for it, and just giving them that sense of empowerment, that real sense of the art of the possible, so they don't feel, well, my grandparents were this, my parents were that, so I'm going to be that as well, rather than actually going, well, I've got a bigger vision than that. This is what I want to do, and really helping them to switch on that switch, because I think as parents, that's what our job is, to help our children to turn on that switch and to believe that absolutely anything is possible for them.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with everything you've just said. And I think it's I find it's quite pivotal sometimes with things like Mother's Day or birthdays. You know, the children over the years have seen, you know, working for myself, and they've written me such beautiful notes and said, "You work so hard, you know, to build your businesses, and you really do inspire us." And they could just be totally playing me, but
I suspect they're not.
hopefully that has rubbed off, and hopefully that is true, and that's a lovely message. You know, what a bigger why could that be than to inspire your own children, so they go forth and absolutely have that belief. You know, we both tell them constantly, our children are always very much brought up with, you can do anything, you know, and it is down to your just your own belief in that and so forth. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And I have told this story a couple of times, so hopefully my audience won't be bored by this, but I was so blown away by it. My 14-year-old son, he's wanted to be an investment banker since he was about 9 years of age.
Wow.
But about a month or so ago, he said to me, "Mum, I've decided I don't want to be an investment banker anymore. I want to work for myself, because I want to be there for my children when they're growing up in the same way as you and Dad have."
Oh my God, I would have cried.
And even now,
yeah,
you know, because we don't actually have full awareness of the impact we are having on our children.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to have that awareness that we can be around for them, and actually for them to take us for granted, that's a privilege. It's a privilege for them to think, well, of course they're going to be at sports day. Of course they're going to be at the school play. Of course they're going to pick us up. And I know with my children, so when I went to that event you mentioned on Friday, I was away the night before at the social. And in the morning, I said to the boys, "Now remember, I'm not going to be here tonight." What do you mean you're not going to be here tonight? Because it's a rarity that I'm not there. And actually, it's a privilege, isn't it, to actually be able to be there in that way.
Yeah, absolutely, quite right. And I think sometimes we probably presume we take it for granted as much as the children, you know, do, because if you've always done it, then, you know, and there's always mum guilt and stuff like that, and I'm sure dad guilt, but there's always mum guilt no matter which way that you look at it. I think, you know, sometimes I can work too hard and want to work all evenings to work on the business, but that's one thing that I've always taken from working for myself that I've loved, is always being able to be there. So yeah, so something I'm very grateful for. You're quite right.
Yeah. And I think as well, when you're running your own business, if you're running the right business and you're working in the way that you want to, actually it can take over your life because you enjoy it. It's not because you always have to do it, but because you have those sudden bright ideas that you want to put into action. Or you realize that there's something else that you can be doing to make something else better, then we don't have great ideas 9 till 5. Those ideas can come in on a Friday evening at 10 o'clock or a Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. Not normally a Sunday morning for me, actually, thinking about it. But I think they can be that almost, well, I thought you worked for yourself. So what you doing working on a Friday night, or what you're doing working in the, you know, in the summer holidays or whatever. Well, it's because I love what I do. Yeah. I'm not constrained by 9 till 5. I've got that sense of doing it when it works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. My children will come in and say, what are you doing? Why are you working now? But like you said, if I've got something that I can do in 10 minutes, I just want to map down or write down or whatever it is, you can have that choices. And, you know, if I don't feel wonderful, or I don't know, just decide I want to give myself the day off, I can, you know, within reason. But you do have those certain choices, like you said, to work when it kind of suits you. And I know in the summer holidays, I tend to work more kind of 6 to 11 maybe, and then I'll have the afternoons off pretty much. Because I can kind of decide to map my days and weeks around the way I want to work and what suits me.
Exactly. So what are you excited about next?
I'm really excited for the rest of 2023. So 2023 has been a big year for me in terms of I've really decided to push through some barriers and limits and beliefs and things that were holding me back. Things like going VAT registered and going limited, just things that a lot of people do all the time. I've been VAT registered before in previous businesses, but I had a negative link to it somewhere. And as a service-based business, I didn't have the products and stuff. So it was really, really holding me back for a long time. So I made a decision probably the end of last year, push through that, and just to continue to grow. And I'm being much more visible at the moment. And again, it was something I was probably hiding behind, and the what ifs and who she thinks she is, and the thoughts and people judging you, and all the rest of it, and all the negativity that can come from that. I think I was doing it to myself. So yeah, becoming more visible, putting myself out there, and also looking into working with like corporates and things, which I've never done, and it's such a new world for me. It's way out of my comfort zone, and looking to kind of help more people in, and just help more and have a bigger ripple effect on who I'm working with.
And your visibility is definitely increased because I'm seeing your adverts all the time. So
that's good.
Goes to show it's absolutely working. Because
you don't always do it for yourself. You don't always put into, my dad was a builder, so we often had unfinished rooms or scaffolding in our kitchen or something, and so you don't always do it for yourself, obviously. And often I'll put my clients first and relegate my own work to the bottom of the pile. So that's something else that I'm kind of being quite aware with. I'm just being much more assertive in this year, in life in general. So yeah, there's a few kind of areas of growth, I think, the rest of this year that I continue to push.
Yeah, which is fantastic. So how can people connect with you?
You can find me anywhere. Katie Colella, website, Instagram and Facebook are my kind of predominant areas that I hang out, that you can find me quite easily there.
So I shall ensure all those details are in the show notes so people can easily connect with you. Thank you very much for coming on today. I've loved our conversation, and it's always lovely to hear from somebody who's taken a different route to me. I started off in corporate, then became an entrepreneur. You immediately switched on that light as far as being an entrepreneur. So thank you for sharing your story, your money story with us today.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.